Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're peeling back the layers on something you probably interact with, well, every single day in your kitchen, cooking oils. You sent us some fascinating source material about what really happens when specific oils, we're looking at mustard oil, ghee, and sunflower oil, are exposed to heat.
And what's truly remarkable here is how, a seemingly simple act, like just turning up the burner, can completely transform the very nature of these fats.
Right.
We're talking about changes that impact everything. I mean, from the flavors and aromas you experience, right down to their safety and nutritional value.
Yeah.
You might think you know what happens when oil starts to smoke, but we're going far beyond that surface level today. We're really getting into the chemistry.
Exactly. This isn't just about things getting hot, is it? We're going on a fascinating journey, really, from room temperature all the way up to extreme heat, uncovering surprising structural shifts, intricate chemical reactions.
And even some hidden, sometimes, harmful compounds that emerge.
So what does this all mean for your daily cooking? Let's unpack the incredible science of oils under fire. The transformation of oils. A temperature journey.
Okay, let's begin our journey with mustard oil. It's known for that distinct, almost pungent kick at room temperature, right?
That comes from a compound called allyl isothiocyanate. That's what gives it that signature arylizing.
Yeah.
At a cool 20 degrees C, it's quite stable. But as it gently warms up, say to 50 C,
Okay.
you'll start to notice that familiar aroma becoming a bit more pronounced. That's the allyl isothiocyanate beginning to volatilize.
Meaning it's turning into a gas, kind of wafting up.
Exactly, becoming airborne.
And then, interestingly, as it reaches around 70 degrees C, that pungency really starts to mellow out, starts to fade.
It does.
But even at these, relatively low cooking temperatures, before you see anything happening, there are significant chemical reactions already starting, aren't there?
That's absolutely right. Even at 70 C, you're starting to see what we call oxidation.
Okay, oxidation. Think of it like tiny bits of oxygen in the air beginning to subtly interact with the oil's molecules, particularly its polyunsaturated fatty acids, the PUFAs.
Right.
And this leads to the formation of unstable compounds called hydroperoxides. These are essentially the precursors, the starting point for all the bigger, more problematic changes we'll talk about.
So a slow, sort of invisible process is already underway. By 100 C boiling point of water, I imagine things really speed up.
Precisely. Oxidation picks up speed, the pungency is mostly gone by then, and you might even detect a slight darkening in the oil's color. Those hydroperoxides are building up.
Then we hit typical frying temperatures, maybe around 150 C. This is often close to mustard oil's smoke point, which our sources put somewhere around 130 to 150 C. So this is where significant visible changes start happening, right?
Absolutely. Critical point. At 150 C, those accumulated hydroperoxides, they rapidly break down. They form aldehydes like hexanol and acrolein.
Aldehydes, okay.
Now, these are some of the compounds that give that distinct fried smell. But importantly, some, like acrolein, are highly irritating and potentially harmful.
Right. You don't want too much of that.
No. And you'll see visible smoke, clearly signaling that the oil is actively breaking down. Also, trans fats. Those unhealthy fats everyone talks about, they begin to form here.
How did that happen again?
It's when the heat sort of straightens out the natural bend in the molecular structure of the unsaturated fats. So the healthy cis form becomes the unhealthy trans form.
Got it.
And you'll also see the start of polymerization, where the oil molecules actually start linking together, making the oil physically thicker.
Wow. It's truly astonishing, really, how much chemical transformation can occur just from a few degrees difference in your pan.
It really is.
So what happens if we really push it, say, to 200 degrees C?
Okay, at 200 C, oxidation and breakdown become rapid and extensive. Trans fats continue to increase. Acrolein production peaks, intensifying that acrid smell.
Not
good at all. Polymerization accelerates, making the oil much more viscous, thicker. You'll see heavy smoking. And there's significant degradation of nutrients, too, like vitamin E gets destroyed. It's essentially past its best for cooking.
And if we push it even further, to those extreme temperatures mentioned in the sources, like 250 C or even 350 C, what's the implication for safety there?
Yeah, this is a really critical point. At 250 C, you're looking at very thick, dark smoke. The oil itself turns a very dark color. It'll taste bitter, and those acrolein fumes become highly irritating. It's just not food anymore at that point.
Really not.
And at 350 C, you're experiencing what's called severe pyrolysis. This isn't just breakdown, it's destruction.
Pyrolysis, okay.
You'll see volatile gases dominating, solid carbonaceous residue, basically soot forming, and highly polymerized carcinogenic tars. This includes PAHs, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons.
Like the stuff from charring on a grill.
Exactly the same type of compound, yes. At this point, the oil is completely destroyed and is definitively, absolutely not food safe. And this extreme breakdown, we'll see this pattern again with the other oils too.
Right. Okay, so from the vibrant pungency of mustard oil, let's shift gears to something quite different. Ghee. This one starts off as a semi-solid, right? Heavy on saturated fats, but it also has its own unique journey under heat.
It absolutely does. A very different starting point. At 50 C, ghee simply melts, becomes a clear liquid, releases its initial kind of delicate aroma. No dramatic changes there yet.
But the real magic, the flavor development, that starts around 70 C, doesn't it?
That's where things get interesting, yeah. At 70 C, the trace milk solids that are still left in the ghee begin to denature, and they start to caramelize. Any leftover water evaporates, you'll notice bubbling.
Ah.
And this is when that mild, distinctive, nutty aroma starts to emerge.
And as we move up to 100 C, that Maillard reaction, you mentioned the browning, the rich flavors, that must be really kicking in.
Exactly. The Maillard reaction intensifies. It deepens that beautiful golden color and enriches the nutty aroma even further. Oxidation also begins slowly here, but it mainly affects ghee's smaller percentage of monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acids, the MUFAs and PUFAs.
Right, because ghee is mostly saturated fat, which is more stable.
Correct. Just to clarify for you listening, MUFAs and PUFAs are just types of fats with different chemical shapes, different structures, and they react differently to heat compared to those stable saturated fats.
So when you reach 150 C, often considered good for shallow frying. This is also around where clarified ghee's smoke point tends to be, though it's quite high. The sources say a 190 to 250 C range. What's happening then?
At 150 C, the milk solids are fully browned, really contributing to that pronounced nutty flavor. And while ghee is generally more stable, significant oxidation certainly begins here. You might see the first little wisps of smoke if you're pushing towards its lower smoke point range.
And for deep frying, say around 200 C.
At 200 C, oxidation and thermal degradation definitely accelerate. You'll see increased aldehyde formation, including that acrolein again.
Ugh, acrolein again.
Yep. And trans fats start to form, even in ghee. Visible smoke becomes more prominent and the flavor sharpens. It might become less pleasant if you hold it at that temperature for too long.
Okay, so we've established that pushing oils to extreme temperatures is bad news across the board. Does ghee follow the same destructive path at 250 C and 350 C?
Yes, it absolutely does. Like we discussed with mustard oil, at 250 C, you're looking at rapid, irreversible degradation, heavy smoke, irritating fumes. It's breaking down fast.
And 350 C.
Complete pyrolysis again. Yielding toxic gases, polymerized residues, black carbon. It's just not food anymore. The specific mix of breakdown products might vary slightly oil to oil, but the end result at these extreme temperatures, thick smoke, potential carcinogens, unsafe for consumption, that's remarkably consistent. No fat is indestructible.
Okay, finally, let's turn to sunflower oil. This one's liquid at room temp, known for being high in linoleic acid. That's a polyunsaturated fatty acid, a PUFA, and it contains its own natural antioxidant, vitamin E.
Right, and given that high PUFA content, oxidation begins almost immediately. At around 70 C, those PUFAs are already starting to react with oxygen.
Wow, 70 C, that's barely warm.
Exactly, and its natural antioxidant, the vitamin E, which is supposed to protect it, starts to get used up fighting against this early degradation.
So its defenses are down almost from the start. By 100 C, that oxidation really picks up speed then.
Indeed. Those hydroperoxides accumulate rapidly. You might even start to detect subtle off-odors, sometimes described as painty or grassy. Those come from aldehydes, like hexanol, early signs of rancidity developing.
Now, what seems really critical here, based on the sources, is sunflower oil's smoke point. Typically 160 to 230 C, that means around a 150 C, a common temperature for just light frying, you're already getting rapid oxidation and breakdown.
That's a key point, yes. At 150 C, you're already forming trans fats, polymerization is beginning, and that protective vitamin E is largely depleted. You'll likely see visible smoke and a noticeable, often unpleasant shift in the oil's odor. It degrades relatively quickly compared to something like ghee.
And at 200 C for higher heat cooking.
Then you're looking at extensive breakdown, high formation of trans fats, significant acrolein production, leading to heavy smoking and a strong, very unpleasant smell. sometimes even foaminess on the surface.
Not good signs.
It's definitely not.
And just to complete the picture, similar to the others, what happens if sunflower oil is pushed to those extremes, 250C or 350C?
It's the same unfortunate story. Just like ghee and mustard oil, at 250cc, there's thick, dark smoke. The oil turns dark brown. Highly irritating fumes are produced.
Yeah.
At 350C, severe pyrolysis. Toxic gases, highly polymerized tars, black char. Just absolutely not something you want near your food or even, frankly, in your kitchen without some serious ventilation. The science behind the sizzle. General processes at play.
Okay, so we've seen the individual stories of these oils play out with temperature, but are there underlying scientific principles, like universal processes that explain why all these dramatic changes happen more or less across the board?
That's a crucial question because, yes, regardless of the specific oil, there are really 6 key chemical transformations going on when you heat fats.
6. Okay.
First, oxidation. We've mentioned this a lot. This is oxygen from the air attacking the fatty acids.
Like rust on metal, but for oil.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It forms unstable compounds, those hydroperoxides we talked about. They then break down further into things like aldehydes, ketones, acids responsible for those off flavors and smells, the rancidity. And crucially, this process is sped up significantly by heat, and especially by the amount of polyunsaturated fats present.
Oh, right.
The more bends or double bonds in the fatty acid chains, the easier they are for oxygen to attack.
So the more PUFAs, the more vulnerable the oil. Makes sense. What's second?
Second is thermal decomposition, or thermolysis. This is the direct breakdown of the fatty acid chains just due to the heat itself, even without oxygen playing a major role initially.
Okay.
This process releases volatile compounds, acrolein, for instance, which comes from the breakdown of glycerol, that's the backbone molecule holding the fatty acids together in the oil. Other hydrocarbons, too.
Third, you mentioned isomerization, which sounds complicated.
It's simpler than it sounds, really. It's basically the conversion of the healthy cis configuration of unsaturated bonds, where the molecule has a natural bend into the trans configuration, where it straightens out.
Ah, so that's how trans fats are made by heating.
Exactly. That's the process.
Yeah.
Fourth is polymerization. We touched on this. This is when the oil molecules start linking together, reacting with each other to form much larger, heavier molecules.
Like molecular clumps.
Precisely. Think of it like cooking spaghetti, and if you don't stir it, it all sticks together in a big clump. It happens on a molecular level with oil, making it thicker, more viscous, gummy eventually.
Okay. And then there's cyclization.
Yeah, that's the formation of new, ring-shaped fatty acid structures within the molecule. Also, generally undesirable from a health perspective.
Right.
And the last one, finally, at the very highest temperatures, we have pyrolysis. This is the most extreme form of thermal decomposition. It's essentially burning the oil beyond recognition. Complete breakdown into gases, solid carbon residue like soot, and those complex, often carcinogenic tars like PAHs.
A little destruction.
Total destruction, chemically speaking. Critical takeaways for your kitchen.
Okay. So bringing this all back home, what does all this fascinating, sometimes, frankly, alarming science mean for you, the person actually cooking in the kitchen? What are the critical takeaways from all these sources?
Right, the practical stuff. First, and this is a big one, a really important shift in thinking, perhaps. Smoke point does not equal safety.
Say more about that. That feels counterintuitive.
Well, for years, many of us, myself included probably, just focused on an oil smoke point as the main guide for cooking safety. If it's not smoking, it's fine, right?
Yeah, basically.
But our sources really suggest this is a common misconception. While smoke is definitely a clear warning sign, it's actually a signal that significant degradation, including the formation of harmful stuff like acrolein, maybe even those PAHs, has already begun, often well before you even see that visible smoke consistently.
So waiting for smoke means you've likely already gone too far.
In many cases, yes. The damage starts earlier. Avoid prolonged heating near or, obviously, above the smoke point.
And here's a crucial distinction we saw. Oils high in PUFAs, those polyunsaturated fats like sunflower and mustard oil, they degrade fastest at high heat.
Correct. Their chemical structure just makes them more vulnerable to oxidation and heat damage.
Conversely, fats higher in SFAs and MUFAs, saturated and monounsaturated fats like ghee, are generally more heat stable. They resist breaking down for longer at higher temps.
And this is a crucial temp, but they still degrade severely at very high temperatures. No oil is invincible. Extreme heat gets them all eventually.
Yeah, that pyrolysis point seems universal.
Absolutely.
The sources also make it really clear about toxicity. Heating any oil far beyond its smoke point, especially getting up towards 250 C and beyond, generates numerous compounds that are just plain harmful to human health.
We're talking acrolein, which is an irritant and a known carcinogen. PAHs, also known carcinogens. And those oxidized polymers, the gummy stuff, which are linked to various health risks too.
So this raises the question then, what's the optimal use? How should people approach this?
It really boils down to matching your oil to your cooking method. Know your oils. Don't use a delicate, low smoke point oil for high heat deep frying, for example.
Common sense, but based on the science now?
Right. And never heat oils to the point where they're just continuously smoking. If your oil starts to smell off or rancid or painty, like we mentioned with sunflower.
Or if it turns significantly darker or foams up excessively.
Those are all signs it's degraded, it's no longer good for you. Probably best to discard it.
And as we've heard repeatedly, never, ever, ever use oil that has been heated way up to 350 C for food. It's completely destroyed and potentially highly toxic.
Definitely not food at that point.
Yeah.
Outro.
So what incredible transformations can happen just by turning up the heat in your kitchen? It's amazing.
It really is.
We've seen how that pungent zing of mustard oil fades away, how ghee develops its nutty golden character, and how even subtle off odors can signal pretty significant chemical changes happening in something like sunflower oil.
And we've learned about the sort of hidden formation of trans fats, these toxic compounds like acrolein, and really the profound importance of understanding an oil's limits, respecting the heat.
Hopefully this deep dive has given you, listening at home, a clearer, maybe more nuanced understanding of this hidden world inside your cooking oils.
Yeah, and why choosing them and using them correctly is actually so important for both the flavor of your food and for your health.
We've truly unpacked what happens to these everyday ingredients when they're put under pressure, under heat, and how what seems like simple cooking can trigger some really complex chemistry.
And this knowledge, hopefully, is crucial for making informed, maybe safer choices next time you're at the stove, getting the best out of your ingredients without the unwanted extras.
Absolutely. And perhaps this whole discussion will make you think about something you might not have considered quite this way before.
Oh.
Given all this detailed information about how oils degrade, how they form polymers,